So how, as Christians, do we fit into a red and blue kind of polarized political climate? I would say if you find yourself sort of politically homeless, that's a good thing, because the thing we all want to be very careful of is we don't want to fall into what a colleague of mine at Biola University, Rick Langer, has a great term for this. He calls it hermit crab theology. Hermit crab theology. And what he's getting at here is that a hermit crab doesn't have its own shell. It'll find like a Coke can on the bottom of the sea. It'll find somebody else's shell, and it just sort of jams itself inside and makes that home. And so hermit crab theology says, oh, well, here's some pre-existing shell of, say, the Democratic Party, or here's the pre-existing shell of the Republican Party. So let's just jam Jesus inside that shell. In other words, let's mount Jesus on the back of a donkey if you're Democratic, or an elephant if you're Republican. And here's the problem with hermit crab theology, is that Jesus won't be bound by any human-made shell. He's bigger and better than anything that either political party in this country, the U.S., has to offer. And so we want to be very careful to keep first things first. Our first and foremost loyalty is to King Jesus and his kingdom, his lordship. Now, if we find ourselves just walking the political party line, then we need to take a hard look in the mirror and say, like, who is my Lord? This was a hot question in the first century, where you had the Caesars of the Roman Empire claiming their own deity, where you had to go out and burn a little pinch of incense once a year. Publicly, you had to burn this pinch of incense, and you had to declare out loud. You had to say, Axios I ho kurios kai ho theos, which means, worthy art thou, our Lord and God, Caesar. And so worshiping politics, worshiping Caesar, was part of what our earliest brothers and sisters in the first and second centuries were up against. And that's usually why they were lion lunch. It's usually why they became human lampposts in Nero's courtyard. It's usually why there was mass extermination attempts, because they refused to bow to the pseudo lordship of Caesar. Their core claim was that Jesus, not Caesar, is Lord. So if we time warp back to now, we need the same courage to say the same thing. We aren't going to bow to this or that presidential candidate as if they're the final answer to all of the country's problems. We need to be able to have a prophetic voice to be able to expose hypocrisy and sin on both sides. But the problem is, once we get locked into an echo chamber, it's like heresy to say anything that critiques your side. And as Christians, again, break out of the hermit crab shells and be free to critique both sides, because Jesus is king and he's superior.